Signs of the Southland, December 12th, 2022. Gentlemen, I have been working all weekend and completely not in front of any sort of non-computer screen. Walk me through Army Navy to start, Mr. Purdy.
I was aware the game was happening, and then I saw, and then my friend was like, wanted to see it was close, and then we saw it was close, and then we saw they went. It was the first overtime version ever of that, and the only thing that came to mind as a comparison was that there's been 55, 56 Super Bowls, and there's only been one overtime, and they played double the amount of this game and finally got to overtime. For as many low-scoring games as this game has produced, it's kind of surprising, but the NASA team, aka Navy, did lose to Army. I think they fumbled the ball at the one, and then Army was able to kick a field goal and take care of that.
Yeah, interestingly, even though it was pretty low scoring the whole way, it was 10-10 when it went to overtime.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this was the first time the game over has hit in like a decade and a half. Not that I'm a big gambling guy, because I'm really not.
Hit
but
the over?
I think so. I swear I saw
Over
that
was
on
34
Twitter
and a half.
Yeah, so then it hit because the final score was 37 total.
Yeah. All right.
Huh. Well, go figure. Ken's out too. Not friend of the podcast, Ken Segura. Coach Ken, successor to Paul Johnson at Navy. He is out at Navy. So
that rivalry is always brings something new to the table the week after conference championship weekend. Let's pivot over to the NCAA volleyball tournament, which surprisingly is still going despite Georgia Tech not participating in it. You'd think they'd have canceled it after that. Pitt versus Louisville is one half of your Final Four, Mr. Grant.
Yeah, I actually spent a decent amount of time watching college volleyball yesterday. I really love that it kind of takes over ESPNU. I feel like that's really a great way to use the U as a channel. Whether that's baseball or softball, wall to wall. College programming is great. Anyways, they did take over the full day. There was an epic 5-setter, Oregon versus Louisville. That was pretty exciting. They played those games down at the Yum Center, which is even more capacity than the Freedom Hall that they played at last year that Tech visited. But yeah, lot of folks in the building to watch some volleyball there, and honestly, probably a better, not even probably, just certainly a better venue than Freedom Hall. No offense to them, but yeah. And then Pitt played. That was another 5-setter against Wisconsin in Wisconsin's Fieldhouse, which is one of the truly iconic venues of the sport. You had a great game in Gregory Gym, which was Ohio State versus Texas. And then San Diego, mid-major from the West Coast Conference, closed everything out. They probably should have been a 1 seed, but they dispatched Stanford in their own building. And with Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Stanford all falling, this is the first ever Final Four without either a Big Ten or Pac-12 team. How about that?
Here's my thought coming out of that. Consider for a beautiful moment a college football playoff without the SEC.
Oh my
God. I wouldn't mind.
Don't get me thinking.
I think it's certainly something that, the talent and the interest is really dispersed around the country the last few years. We've seen a lot of programs really rise up. Even I know we're not really SEC fans in general either, but as the ACCs come up, the SEC's had a great little moment too, particularly something like Kentucky. So really, really exciting to see more of the country buying into the sport in some of the traditional backwaters. I will say Omaha is the site for the Final Four. Feels fitting. NCAA does like having some big events, and Omaha puts on a good show, whether that's swimming or baseball or volleyball. So very exciting there in Nebraska. Creighton have both strong legacy, so should be a lot of interest. I'm stalling because I had forgotten the thing I really wanted to say, and that's that, boys, we've kind of gone down this rabbit hole before. Do you know the best ever finish for an ACC team? We've talked about it on the podcast relatively recently, so it wouldn't surprise me if you remembered.
No one's
Florida State, Louisville, and Pitt all Final Four.
Yeah. Yes. And with the coveted, long-awaited Pitt v. Louisville 3 coming in the Final Four, that means the ACC is guaranteed its first ever participant in the NCAA Women's Volleyball Division I National Championship. I think that's pretty cool. Even though we're not in it, like that shows, Tech was playing with both of those teams really strong, and an Ohio State team that gave Texas the clear number one a strong fight the other day as well. So really, really exciting to see. It sucks that we're not there, but just shows the quality of play that they're up against.
Yeah, it's insane to think about where the conference has been and where it is now, right? Because the depth and even the relative depth isn't really there, but the conference has only been a regional power for what, 2, 3, 4 years maximum, right? Like 2019, 2018.
Yeah. I mean, Pitt coming into the conference and also Louisville has kind of come up since they've been in too, was really kind of what turned the corner, traditional Notre Dame strength there as well. But Pitt has kind of run the league since day one, and Louisville's really come up to meet them at their level. But we really haven't had a Tech style depth or third team type situation. Florida State and Miami kind of trailing us there, but the top 5 teams in the conference are all really, really phenomenal this year, and that's with a down Notre Dame and the Tobacco Road schools who've traditionally kind of been at least decent, kind of being down as well. One other national championship to watch for, 6 p.m. again on ESPNU. Syracuse does play Indiana for the men's soccer. I was about to say World Series. Men's soccer
World Series, everyone.
Yes.
MLS, take note.
It's the College Cup. Put some respect on its name.
In Cary, North Carolina. But just in case anyone else wanted some ACC and or college championship action. We're not really an all ACC podcast. That's Joey's domain. But in terms of just other interesting sports, that caught my eye as well.
We'll win it one day. One day.
At some point.
One day.
At some point, I'm sure. Moving right along, last mention here, Brock Purdy is really doing a number on his name as Mr. Irrelevant from a draft a couple of years ago.
I think Purdy's the more relevant name here, just speaking from complete bias here, and also Seattle Seahawks fandom. Like, I don't want the Niners to ever win a game ever, but here we are. Mr. Irrelevant is relevant. This is the most famous Purdy. As far as I know, there's been 3 in the NFL, and he's the only one that's done anything ever. So, welcome to...
It's Brock Sember, as I've always said.
Brock Sember? Okay, cool.
As I've always said. Instead of lingering on that joke, Mr. Purdy, give me some updates on the Campanile and its construction process.
So, if you've been on campus, you've seen the whole Campanile's been getting redone. The fountain's getting redone. The rec garage is also almost done. Like, it's right there. All the bike racks are up. The landscaping's just about
almost.
We're
as it has been for like 3 months.
I think we just got to the third almost in the last couple of weeks. We're only at 2 almosts before that.
Okay.
But the fountain now is actually turned on at the Campanile. And yes, also it's a fountain. It doesn't have those deep. It's only one section. It's slants downwards. I mean, if you go to campus, you'll be able to see it. But there's like no fencing or whatever. Like, if it's warm outside, I see absolutely no reason to go jump in it and just cool it. At least get your feet wet or something like that. It's meant to be inviting, is what I was told.
It's more of a shallow pond than a.
It really is. It ranges from 0 feet to like a foot. So, but the Campanile's still right there. The spire is right there, and there's seating around it now, like there was with the old one, and more landscaping around it too, small trees and stuff and whatnot. So, if you ever go into the Chick-fil-A in the student center, which is a real Chick-fil-A, you can get points at it now. Like, it is a
really?
Yes, you can get points at the student center Chick-fil-A now.
You've got to be kidding.
It is now my number one.
As a minor aside, that Chick-fil-A before the student center renovation was one of the worst Chick-fil-A's in America.
Oh yeah.
Like, well, personal ranking, but like worst Chick-fil-A in America that I've ever been to. I'm very glad that it's now run effectively and efficiently like most other Chick-fil-A's.
Good. I'd be a lifetime, whatever their highest status was, if they would have been counting all those points I could have gotten the 5 years I was at Tech. But neither here nor there. I don't need to go to Chick-fil-A anymore than I do trying to lose weight. But anyways.
Well, what would your Chick-fil-A status would be if you had a couple $1 billion? Let's say
it would be shareholder.
15 million.
It'd be shareholder.
15 million over 5, Mr. Grant. Because
15
that is what Brent Key's contract looks like with Georgia Tech.
That's I wouldn't say that this is higher or lower than I expected, if that makes sense. Like, it was kind of in the range of my expectations. That being said, $15 million sounds like a plenty nice amount of dollars. So congrats to him on that. Just in terms of the range, I think it was kind of what I expected. I know that some people spun this as like mega discount budget higher, but there was really no way that it was going to come in much lower than this for a Power 5 job. So quite frankly, I mean, I'd love for this to become seen as an even better value over the next 3 years based on his 5 years, based on his performance on the field. And that's kind of where I see it.
Yeah, so a couple more details. 5 years, $15 million. It increases over time, starting at $2.8 million in fiscal year 23, or I guess calendar year 23. The buyout will reduce over time the remaining portion of the contract value. It's always the remaining portion of the contract value. It will be 50% of the remaining value in year 4. The salary pool for assistants and staff is up 30% from 2022 to 7.5 million. This is all from our good friend Ken Segura at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I will note that Ken did not specify if the assistant pool is just on field or if it's both on field and off field. Reminder that you can have 10 total on field coaches, but unlimited number of off-field staff. From what I was reading around the internet, I think Florida has a $7.5 million on-field assistant pool. So that's a good comp for you. And they have a $5 million off-field assistant pool. So there's some numbers just to sort of put this in perspective. I will say that this is all things considered, this is a pretty small contract. This is, average annual value of $3 million for a Power 5 coach. I think, Jake, you said it best. It can't get a lot lower than this for a Power 5 head coach. He was always going to get a deal that looked something like this. Mr. Purdy, Jake and I have spoken a lot here. Do you have any thoughts on this contract before we move on?
Well, I remember talking about before, like in the days right before he got hired, that like this, while this wasn't our top preference, the idea of we can still get a guy for cheaper that everybody likes, that in theory helps that helps not put more stress on the debt problem, is a win in that sense. So,
Yep.
and now it is actually reality, and it is signed in ink. So, and is a public document you can go find. So, yeah, in that sense.
Well, you can find it in 3 months, I assume.
Whenever it comes out.
FOIA time.
Yeah, but yeah, just to make sure we close that loop of like, yes, this is what we thought might happen, and indeed did happen, and so now we'll have to see. Who knows if there's any outstanding debt fixes that happen with this. It's probably more of a bat issue and less than what this contract means, unless for whatever reason we have to do another buyout, which, Lord willing, that will never happen again in Georgia Tech's history.
Boy.
Keep in mind
that it's never going to happen again.
Shooting for the fences.
I was going to say, this is clearly him being ambitious, and I respect that. But again, keep in mind, the last guy just got paid a very large sum of money to go away, and we already know the debt's a problem. So you could say this will help, but I think the proper term would be not hurt worse. Because
hopefully, if there's hopefully the buyout comes from the coaching end this time and not from the institute end, if it does ever happen.
Well,
or we build him a statue in 40 years. That would be nice too.
I like that idea.
I'm signing up for that.
We'll see about that. Just to hit a couple of other notes, a lot of portal entrants this week as the transfer portal officially opened. Quarterback Tyson Fomachan, wide receiver Nate McCollum, cornerback Derek Allen, the aforementioned quarterback Jeff Sims, and offensive line player, I guess it was a utility player. I think he was offensive line. I'd have to go back and check. Paula Vaipulu, all in the portal. It's a lot of players entering the portal, a lot of name brand players entering the portal, seeing that there's coaching regime change afoot. We will see how Tech uses the portal moving forward in the next couple of weeks. I think we noted when we were talking to Ken last week that the portal and when it opens and the timing of all that was probably a factor in how Tech wanted to run its coaching search. So we'll see how they replace some of these players at skill positions. In terms of coaching carousel news, it still spins. And boy, is it still spinning. I think Tech is still down an offensive coordinator and wide receivers coach, but it does apparently, according to reports and a tweet from Russell Johnson at 24/7 Jackets Online. Um, App State's offensive line coach Jeep Wade is already out recruiting for Georgia Tech. That has not been confirmed by the school, but Russell did retweet a recruit posting that Wade had visited him. So
in Tech gear,
weird.
acting on official
in Tech
duty.
gear. College coaching stuff.
Maybe they just like
so
white and gold, I don't know.
With conveniently located interlocking GTs on the chest.
Yep.
I'm kind of impressed at how fast they got him gear. Personally, do you think they put the contract on top of a pullover when they send it over?
I
in a
imagine.
packet?
I wonder if they overnighted something. Yeah, or they sent him $30 and said, or however many bucks, said, "Hey, go to Dick's and go get a shirt for yourself and go."
I'm sending you.
He can walk past
NFT.
the aisles and aisles and aisles of red and black they have at local Dick's Sporting Goods. Ugh.
Speaking of red and black, head coach Brent Key had an interesting selection of words to say at halftime of the recent men's basketball game version of Clean Old Fashioned Hate.
This is an absolute dream come true. All right, so look. We've got a long road in front of us. We've got a lot of work to do, right? And we will work every single possible day to give you guys an outstanding football product on the field. With every ounce and fiber in my body, I promise you, the men we work with, the staff we put together, will do the exact same thing. It has the exact same mindset to win. To win every game that we play. That is the goal. That is the goal. When you play the game, the goal is to win. It's not to play well. It's to win. We've got to keep the same enthusiasm, the same excitement going through the entire season. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. But you guys do not change. Y'all are what makes this place special. And this is the greatest school in the entire state, the entire country, we'll put a product on the field that you guys can be proud of. On the field, off the field, in the classroom. And that's our goal. For our players to be better when they leave here than they got here. For our players all to graduate with the degree that they want and the degree that's meaningful and to set them for life after football. And to teach our players how to play winning football, to develop them on the field. Individually as players and collectively as a team. And that's how we have to play. We'll play as a team. We'll be the most disciplined team on the field. That's our goal. Be disciplined, play with toughness, be physical, be fast. All the things are important to building a great football team, guys. But the most important thing we have to have are y'all. We have to have the fans. We have to have the fan support because we're all in this together. Every one of us. Everybody here, guys. My diploma says the same thing on it y'all does. It's the Georgia Institute of Technology. All right, so you guys are all in this together. All right? One last time. What's the good word?
Mr. Grant, let's go to you first. What do you think about Key's wrestling promo, so to speak?
I mean, I'm sure it probably hit a little bit different live. I've listened to it, gosh, probably 3 or 4 times because both Jack and Ken, and I think maybe Kelly Quinlan, were kind enough to record it and post it and send it and distribute it, all that good stuff. In terms of the read live versus via secondhand. I think maybe some of those applause moments are probably the emotional spikes that you may miss on a secondhand listen. And I think I probably did. That being said, I've already been on the record of being a guy who kind of gets hook, line, and sinker for a Brent Key emotional speech. The stuff he says touches all of the big points that I kind of think about when I'm thinking about Georgia Tech athletics, wanting to be great, but also wanting to graduate kids in majors they pick. You know what? Dang it. That's what I want. Being successful on the field. He said about everything you could reasonably expect him to say. And that's what they sent him there to do, get people excited for next year. So I think he achieved that.
I can assuredly say you would have been screaming at the top of your lungs in that moment because I've never heard McCamish louder, for one. Like I don't think there's been a sold out game since I've been there, and I didn't attend that many men's basketball games as a student, which is why I'd missed a lot of moments that would have accounted for that. But I mean, no point in the game was louder than when he got people to say to hell with Georgia. Like that, it never got louder in there. And people were just really into it. And I'll note he was sitting with Dr. Cabrera, Beth Cabrera, and Mark Teixeira at the game. They were all courtside together. Brent left at halftime for, I assume, to go do his job or go to bed. I don't know. But they were there as a posse in a sense, which was that seemed. I mean, it didn't seem weird to me, but chief fundraiser, president of the college, new head coach. It seems like those are some partners in figuring this all out. So, in the moment, I mean, I had to like hold myself in too because I'm in the media row and I'm not trying to like scream at the top of my lungs, and I'm next to two Georgia people next to me as well. So I'm like, all right, let me not go nuts here.
What you should have done is just, kept it inside and just written on a slip of paper and just handed it to each of the guys next to you.
So I will say my seat in McCamish is in the section right next to the press box. So if you ever need to just excuse yourself and visit, you can always duck over there. I, for one, was not there live due to some personal events that arose at the not 11th hour, like the 10th hour. So much to my chagrin, but it was stuff that needed to be done. Disappointing not to see it live. And, we'll talk about this in a minute. A heck of a game too. I'm sure that if, there's some freshman out there that was just at their first game or some alum who hasn't been in a while, that was probably a good one to see to get them back and hooked.
Oh, another note. This was unlike football games. Like 70-30 Tech to Georgia fans in there. Like there was no sea of red there. It was the right proportion for a rivalry game in a basketball game. Like I was actually kind of surprised. And also just to echo what Key said, he says what we say, go to the games.
You should check out a Tech UGA baseball game because those are fun and delightfully Tech skewed. And also volleyball.
Those crowds are feral.
There are no tickets left for a UGA fan to buy for volleyball. So that's always a nice thing too.
I mean, it helps when we have a
volleyball and baseball, clean old fashioned hate. Like those crowds are legitimately feral. It's kind of bad. Like if the baseball ones especially.
If we're gonna do some remembering, some Tuesday night back when. So Jack, they used to play the UGA Tech baseball series split over 3 Tuesdays rather than as a weekend series, one in each location. Yeah. So, and it was always early in the season too, with the late in the season game being up at Truist or Turner, depending on how far back you want to go. But those early season games, gross, cold, dark, not that full because even though it's a rivalry game, it's a Tuesday night and it's disgusting. That's saucy, but also, while I indulge myself here, that 2019 game at Truist Park, that was not mostly Tech fans because there were 30,000 people there or 20,000 people there. But man, they need to move that game back from Coolray. That's my new. They need to play volleyball games in McCamish. Sorry, hill to die on. I want that Truist game back. I will post it into existence.
New windmills. We need to give you multiple new windmills to fight now.
I'm the boy with the thumb
And
in
on
the
that
dike,
note,
but
and on that note, we'll be right back to talk about the men's basketball game after this short break.
yes. So, as you all know, this is a Scions of the Southland plug for Section 103. Section 103 is the preferred partner, really the most preferred of any possible partner for this here fine podcast. Section 103 makes apparel, specifically Georgia Tech apparel, and they make it really in all shapes, sizes, Georgia Tech related colors. You can find it all there. I know we've talked recently about some of the new stuff that they've added. So today I'm going to talk about an old favorite of mine. The very first thing I got from Section 103 was the I'm a Ramblin' Wreck from Georgia Tech t-shirt, but they've also got a number of long-standing designs, a lot of them centered around the word mark. So the Tech, the Georgia Tech, and also the interlocking GT. It is very hard to go wrong. They've got it on navy, gold, and gray backgrounds, and you can really get it in sweatshirt. You can get it in short sleeve, long sleeve, all that great stuff in really any conceivable combination of the above. As always, free shipping on orders over $70, and they are a great partner for this here podcast.
Welcome back to Scions of the Southland. Gentlemen, let's continue our conversation on the men's basketball game at McCamish Pavilion versus the Athens Community College. This was a fun one. This was a thrilling one. It was a clean, old-fashioned win. Mr. Purdy, you were on Media Row. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Both coaches after the game, Mike White, not the same Mike White that writes The White Lotus or was on Survivor, but Mike White, the coach of the Georgia basketball team, and Pastner were both.
Or the one that plays quarterback for the Jets.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. So many Mike Whites in the world right now. They were both very emphatic that it was just a good basketball game in general. Like, they both were able to just see that outside of what they were wanting to do, that was like, this was just fun to be at, just in general. It was a 79-77 win, 77-75, something like that. 2-point win for the Jackets in the last few seconds. Georgia, they admitted, they had some stuff they wanted to get better at. Tech had some stuff they could have gotten better at as well. But it was a very offensively free-flowing game. Like, I think a lot of people were expecting this to be like a 55-50, 62
rock fight.
So just in a sense, it was a rock fight, except the shots went down and the layups went in. Like, it played out like a rock fight that just had the scoring element just a little bit boosted. That was it. The last part in the last like few plays there, they who was it? Javon had the Javon. Crap.
Franklin.
No, it wasn't Franklin. The guy that made the steal at the last second.
Jalen Moore.
Jalen Moore, yes. Georgia's coach that got asked about it directly, like, what was that play there? And they thought that was a play that would work against man or zone, and that they just didn't do it well enough. Is basically how they frame that, or how Coach White framed that. So yeah, it was a great game for us for sure. I mean, granted, we had to go into UNC after, and that didn't go as well. So, which we'll get to, but yeah, I think the effort was great. There was the other funny thing I found was that anytime that Lance Terry for Tech or Terry Roberts for Georgia ever did anything, they would always follow each other. If Lance Terry made a bucket, Terry Roberts made a bucket, or the other way around. They always came in pairs. I don't know why, but it was just one of those weird things like, okay, Lance Terry shot, that doesn't matter because Terry Roberts is getting the next bucket, and it doesn't mean anything. But no, in terms of fan experience, that was definitely, the best McCamish thing since volleyball this season. There's a lot of people. I mean, that was as full. I go to more women's games than men's games, so I don't see the arena that full all the time. So that was good to see. And then the key thing we talked about, that was a nice energy boost as well. The team itself as we'll talk about after UNC, they still got some ways to go. They're not all the way there yet. Also, watch Coach Passman's press conference if you haven't already. Before he starts taking questions, he starts talking about outer space. And then Ken Segura walks in and immediately starts making fun of Michigan University, Ken's alma mater. Like, it is the funniest stuff.
His pressers have long been must-watch TV,
yeah.
If I do say so.
Yeah. He was
also Michigan University is a new one. by the way.
Yeah, no, it was
Michigan
really funny.
University
It
is
was
definitely
really
a new one.
really funny. Just the timing when Ken walked in, it was funny. I'll note, and this is another reason why I love Josh Pastner, is he like took like a minute, and Tech reposted this today. How like he mentioned like that game was important for the student body as a whole, because that was reading day for everybody. That was Tuesday night, going into reading day. That was the last day of classes going into reading day. Sorry, and that just for those that were there, and there was a lot of students there, they managed to unfurl the big gold and white tifo that goes up at football games as well, which, according to my friend Taylor, was the first time in a while that had even gotten used. And it got fully unfurled. Like, we had enough students to fully unfurl it.
Jack, I can do you one better on the source. And as the guy who used to be the guy who would unfurl.
Oh, you did the
tifo.
unfurl. Oh, right. Yeah, Rec Club does that. That's right.
So I was football and basketball chair of Rec Club. Longtime listeners are sick of me saying that. But as somebody who was the person who held both of those at the same time, I figured we could get some synergy out of the flag being not used for anything during the winter. So fun fact, I think this was Akshay's junior year, my sophomore year. No, it would have been your senior year, my junior year. So Georgia Tech men's basketball was let's say middling at best, and that's pretty generous. But right after the turn of the year, we were like, hey, we're done with football season. We don't have this flag. Let's, on a Friday, all go over with the athletic staff and practice unfurling it. We're going to get everyone there. And there was two conditions. They didn't want to do it in a sellout for the first time, because that would be too like many people in the concourse and down on the floor and all that good stuff. And they didn't want to do it when it was too empty, because that would be lame, right? If you only fill up the section halfway, that would be bleh. So the rest of the way, we had either complete and total sellout, i.e. UNC, and I think we might have played Duke at home that year.
There was a Duke game. I was at that.
So like messy zoo of games. Or it was half abandoned because the team was, dare I say, not that great. So the flag sat there the entire year and never got used.
Oh, man.
And then the next year, I was not in charge of that, so I don't really know what happened. And then they were going to try and do it during COVID just to see if it would fill the arena and add some ambiance. But then everyone was like, everyone touching stuff and questions. And this is just the first time they were able to ever pull it off. So can confirm that we've never used the flag for that before in the past. And then they finally, had the right combination of somebody who remembered that it existed and an interesting need. So that was cool to see finally done. I would think it wouldn't take 5 years to get a flag unveiled, but
Let's talk about UNC very quickly. The main headline on this one is, and I quote, "They are bigger than us and better at rebounding," isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the lead on that one too, because I watched all of that game. It was not, as I would say, delightful. We were out rebounded 43-22. We had a grand total of one offensive rebound, and I remember exactly when it happened because it was very late in the game. And I was like, I don't think we've had any offensive rebounds yet. And we had, of note, Javon Franklin did only play 6 minutes. He came out at about I think it was like the 12-minute break, and I don't believe he ever saw the floor again. It was a game that was pretty tight most of the first half until UNC went on an 11-0 run, which is never great. The final margin wound up being a 16-point margin, so obviously there was a little bit more of outplaying in there, but really Armando Bacot, star of UNC, did come back after some previously missing some time. He played 33 minutes, so started and played 33 minutes, I should say. So up there with the UNC team, and he was really all over the boards, with 13 of them. Sorry. And he also played a pretty clean game, one foul, 21 points, pretty clean in terms of 8 for 16 from the floor. So really can't do much when their stars on and you let them go on a quick run. And I would say that's what put the game out of reach. We tried in the second half, but just never got closer than another 7 or 8 points.
Not ideal. Men's basketball will next play Alabama State. But before we move on, to that get right game and women's basketball up ahead. Mr. Purdy, anything on the UNC game?
No, I mean, I was able to tune in during the second half, and I mean, by that point, it was pretty much out of the way and gone. So that was unfortunate. It's really timely that we don't play for a week, so that Davon and Javon can get healthy as well. It didn't seem like two major nicks, so I imagine they'll be healthy and good to go for Alabama State. But they'll be, and they also Pastner in the post game, which was I just listened to it. I wasn't there in North Carolina, but he mentioned they needed to get better with conditioning, and they're going to work on that this week. So
one thing I will note is Davon Smith was kind of 0 for everything from the floor. 22 minutes of play. He was having a tough time getting shots to fall, but that doesn't mean he wasn't really athletic up and down the court. He had pretty, I would say, still meaningful impact on the game, even if you looked at it and were like, but you still got to get those shots to fall. Kyle Sturdivant went 0 for 6. I think the shot selection just in general from the team probably leaves a little bit to be desired. I don't think that's too harsh or unfair to say yet, but when you're going up against a very talented team, one that was on a 4-game skid, but one that is still very talented in their home building to open ACC play, having Sturdivant go 0 for 6, Davon 0 for 5, that's pretty tough. I'd say Jalen Moore, Debo Coleman, and Miles Kelly, and honestly Rodney Howard 3 for 3 too. So like they were all relatively fine there. It's just tough if your shots aren't falling, and whether that's rebounding or shooting from the floor. I don't think we were pretty good at either of those, and those are both things that you need to make those makeable shots and capitalize early, and that was one thing that we didn't do when we were having a good go of it in terms of defense and forcing some turnovers and things like that. It's not like we turned the ball over a ton. It's not like we fouled too excessively. Granted, we did double them up in terms of fouls, which you don't want, but it's kind of something that you may or may not expect going up to Tobacco Road as well.
Unless you're going to Winston-Salem.
The black and gold headed stepchild of the ACC.
Winston-Salem or Raleigh, honestly. Let's pivot over to women's basketball. They played their first game at home in 3 weeks versus 1 win, Central Michigan. Not much to talk about from the actual game itself, considering the opponent. But are there any tactical shifts that you saw, Jack, while watching this one?
So this is the 3rd or 4th game in a row that Aisha Arana has started over Nerea Hermosa, and Tasha Butts was the post-game presser person today instead of Coach Fortner. And I asked her about it, and she was basically it's boiled down to that her effort in practice has earned her the spot. And that's it. She's worked really well, and she's worked hard. As soon as they made the change, they started winning. So there's that, and the rebounding kind of got solved. And there is a sense that Nerea is still kind of trying to figure out her spot and how to fit in this offense without Kubai there. So I think there's still some lingering growing pains in terms of figuring out how the paint play is going to work between the two of them. They both are great. Tasha wasn't bashing on Nerea. It's just like that part's going to take a little bit more time. But Aisha's done really well. Kayla Blackshear had a great game today. She's not the tallest on the team, but she's the most forceful in terms of getting rebounds. She was the only one with 10 today. So that was good for them. They still got some work on turnovers. But by the end, the garbage time was basically the entire second half. So all the freshmen got a lot of minutes today. I saw they put Toni Morgan in at the end with the bench players, and she's been starting at guard every game this year so far. And I was curious, is she playing with them because that's who the freshmen are and that's who's going to be her teammates after this year, and it won't be Cammie and Bianca Jackson? And Coach Butts was like, that was kind of an accident. She just is young and not a veteran, so she has to play basically in that sense, and she's the distributor of the team in that she is the first string, second string, third string guard in all the senses, and just while she's a freshman. So that's all it is there. Aaliyah Love played 4 minutes today in the second half, barely touched the floor when she didn't need to. My eye test has not been impressed with her quite yet. She's gotten better, and she's gotten her starting spot back. But this team still has some work to do in terms of making easy layups sometimes. But otherwise, pretty standard game, led by 32 at one point.
Yeah, I do want to note, just for the listening public who may or may not have watched this, I was putting together some notes for my column, just taking a look at the box score, and I did note that the starters played a relatively small percentage of the minutes. In hindsight, you had Arnaz with 17, Schwartz with 21, Tony Morgan with 28, Bianca Jackson with 24, and Aaliyah Love with just 12. That yields you a pretty interesting selection of the bench. You can take a cross section. There we go. Of the rest of the bench, and there were 7 in the rotation that did see the floor. 34 or 38 points from the bench. So definitely an interesting day just to see the lineup rotation, getting different folks in. So
Yeah.
that is worth noting. But in general, I'm gonna check the exact number here before I say it out loud. But Georgia Tech,
I've got the minutes on me at least for today's game. They give you they give you a really fancy paper after the games of women's basketball games with all this info.
I was going to go with the RPI, but Tech's at 69th, and Central Michigan is, I believe, at 320. Yeah, Central Michigan's at 320th. So again,
they're 1-8 right now, and they look like a 1-8 team. So that makes sense.
It's not the place you want to be. For context, they were 287th last year when we played them in their own building. Again, I don't really see what the value of playing on the road at Mount Pleasant is. Maybe I see getting them in our building, but I don't think we learned really much of anything from this, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think they're just working. This was, if anything, a training game. It counted, so they played like it was a real game. But I mean, by the second half, Cam Swartz played 4 minutes, Love played 3 minutes. So like this was also, in a lot of senses, this was, all right, let's figure out what else works rotation-wise, and they're still working on that. Like, they're not done with that project and what their early game, mid-game, and late-game strategies are. So that'll be something else they can work on this week before they go to Boston College, which will be Cam Swartz's return game home, where she played her first 4 years.
Yep.
Right. So that is Alabama State on Saturday for men's basketball. That's a 2 p.m. tip at home. And then at Boston College away for women's basketball on Sunday at 1 p.m. So interesting week. I mean, interesting setup next weekend after the finals break. And I'm sure Mr. Grant, in order to preview this Boston College game, has a similarly interesting setup.
Yeah. So I have my website of results. Do you guys remember the premise, the timeline and all that?
Since 2016? 18?
Yep, since 2016-17.
Okay.
Today we're only looking at Boston College since that was the theme to go off of. Georgia Tech has played them, or I guess matched up against them head-to-head in every sport. Every sport that we can do this error. Whoa.
That we play with them?
Yes. Hold on. My thing is spitting out an error. I had it all queued up.
Oh, no.
Vamp here for a second.
This is why you never do live demos.
Got it. I got it. Georgia Tech has played Boston College in baseball, football, men's basketball, men's and women's swimming, men's and women's tennis, softball, and volleyball. Pretty straightforward ask for y'all today. What is Georgia Tech's win percentage against Boston College, the school which we have the greatest win percentage against in the last 7 years?
Across all sports.
Across all sports.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to shoot for 750.
Okay.
I'm going to go a little lower and say 650 and above.
Wow. We averaged the two of you guys out. Beat you right there. It's a 707 win percentage, 41 wins, 17 losses. And we've played them, like I said, in every sport. Interestingly, softball and football are the ones that are under 500, unless softball's just at it, and I need to add a 500 line to my chart. But football is certainly below, with everyone else being above. Men's swimming, women's swimming, and both tennis teams have never lost to Boston College during this window. Thank you for indulging me there. Women's basketball, I believe, is going for their either 7th out of 9 or I think it's 7th out of 9 wins in that.
Well, they dropped this fixture. I think they dropped it last year and the year before.
Yes, they are going for their 7th out of 9. They're currently 6 out of 8 in the last 6 and change seasons against Boston College.
Yeah. Also, one other note before we move away on this: hasn't football only played them like twice in that span?
3 times. 2 games were against
21,
Jeff Collins. Yeah.
So 21.
Jeff Collins teams.
Oh, so 21 and 19.
21 and 20. Do you know what the third game was?
Ireland.
Yes.
No, it can't have been Ireland. Ireland was 16.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to know a fun fact about that specific game as it relates to this data set?
Go for it.
That is the oldest game in this data set.
Someone cherry-picked when he started at college.
Yes, I did. It was a pain in the butt to compile all this. I was like, you know what? My first game on. But there you go.
For what it's worth, I pulled up the Winsipedia comparison. We've played them 11 times. We're 7-4 historically. We played them in 72 and won that game. We won the first 4. A game in 72, a game in 89, a game in 91, and a game in 97. 97, 98 was a home and home. So basically we did home and homes every 20 years until they joined the ACC.
Fun times in the Matt Ryan years.
Matt Ryan.
Yep.
It's weird it's weird to have opinions about an opponent like that. Like it puts me in a very awkward position to both be a very serious Matt Ryan truther and also a Georgia Tech football fan.
I will say that Matt Ryan and the Georgia Tech football program certainly inspire a lot of emotions both ways for you. So it's okay to be that way. You have my permission.
Don't patronize me. I feel patronized. Let's move along. I think that kind of wraps it up for our major news topics, our usual major news topics. Mr. Grant, walk us through some of the miscellaneous notes for this
Yes. As Jack has so kindly noted for us, there is a casual stroll by Britain tomorrow night. For those that are in the know, that's what you think it is. For those that aren't, that's Midnight Bud. That was one of my favorite things in college. So go stroll by Britain at 10 p.m. or thereabouts tomorrow. Graduation is coming up. Congrats to all that listen to this that may be graduating. Welcome to the Georgia Tech alumni family. We are happy to have you with us. Also of note, we talked about ACC volleyball and soccer in their respective tournaments. Keep an eye on that. Playoff atmospheres are looking super cool for both. So if you're bored tomorrow night or next weekend, go check those out. Keep an eye out from us. I was thinking I'd put together a Christmas type, holiday type tech stuff, books, interesting things I read this year, but I just haven't put that together. But if you have any recommendations, be sure to comment them on whatever comes out with this. And then looking ahead, we're thinking about baseball. We're thinking about softball. Keep an eye out for previews related to that in the spring. We'll have tennis, men's and women's, and golf spring coming down the pipe as well. But I think that rounds out our miscellaneous news as well.
I think this is the last episode of the active semester, potentially. I guess with graduation next weekend. So
please don't fire anyone else while we're on winter break.
I don't want to do another emergency pod. Please.
You didn't do that.
Well, I guess it's not.
Yeah, you didn't
Hold
show
on a
up.
second.
I parked my car in a parking deck in Midtown to do that one, sir. Where were you?
In Midtown, also.
Oh my God, Lord willing, I should have one more interview lined up with someone on the volleyball team, and hopefully that will result in another episode this week. But TBD there. But here's hoping. At the very least, we'll have a season recap thing out there because a lot happened this year that's worth putting in a single place for everyone to see and just to appreciate how good that season was.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me again tonight. Thank you to our sponsors, Section 103. Mr. Grant, take us away.
Yep. As Akshay noted, thanks again to Section 103. You can find them at Section 103 on Twitter, section103.com. You can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. We post an article that goes out with these podcasts every week. You can comment there and engage with us and really read all the terrific writing that comes out of the site from people much smarter about football than I, but also all of our non-rev and basketball and baseball stuff as well. You can email us at fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. We love your suggestions and comments. It really helps us shape what we do here. So keep those coming. For the Twitters, you can find us at FTRS blog. That is where we do a lot of engaging, a lot of live tweeting, and you can interact with us there as well. You can find me at JakeGrant98, Jack at Jack Nicholas. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, super close to the 5,000 follower mark on Facebook. So be a part of that. Jack's been doing great content on Instagram as well. Those are at From the Rumble Seat. You can find this podcast wherever fine podcasts are sold and or distributed. Go like, subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe on someone else's phone. Tell your friends, tell your family. We really appreciate it. And as always, give us feedback if you've got it. And we really appreciate you helping us steer where this podcast goes next. Thanks for listening. Good night, good luck, and go Jackets.